Uh, yeah, so an improvised Drupal UX meeting, April 17th, 2018, um, about the one and only media library. I think Adam is
Okay.
going to show us
Well,
current
this
state of things and discuss or recap what was discussed at DrupalCon last week.
sure. Okay, so I guess this will probably be pretty quick, and or I mean, it's just so rare that I get to have the entire UX meeting to myself. Um, so here's the thing. So we had a media meeting in DrupalCon Nashville. Benji was there. I was there. Christian Fritsch, Marco Scotto, Sam Mortensen, and a few important takeaways. One is for the rest of the quarter, I have the wizard Sam working on this, and he's doing nothing but this. So getting the media library into 8.6 is top priority for us.
Hmm.
And we just because we decided to do it as an experimental module called Media Library, and that'll be merged into Media hopefully before 8.6 lands, just so we can move a little bit faster with it. We decided that we're going to get it landed in three parts. So the first part of this is we have to create a new view called Media Library, which is a much nicer way to list media, and that's what I'm going to demo today, what we have so far. And then the next two stages are going to involve integrating that with content, with the content authoring part of things, so that like when you're creating a node, for example, or a new page, you can choose media that's already in your library and reuse it. Um, and so I'm just going to show the view part. So let me share my screen. Does that all make sense, by the way?
What are the three parts again? So,
So the first thing is we're going to get a view
yeah.
landed in. We're going to land this view in a module called Media Library.
Hmm.
And that just changes the way you browse media.
Yep.
It makes it a lot prettier, and I'm going to demonstrate sort of the before and after in a
Hmm.
moment. The second part then is once we land that, we're going to integrate it with the authoring forms, so that when you're creating a
Okay.
page, you can go reuse that stuff.
So that you can
And that's
access it from all the right places.
exactly.
Okay.
So let me share my
Then
screen here.
three.
Oh, and three is we're going to extend that so that you can also create new media when you're authoring
Right.
content instead of having to jump over to another page, create media, and then come back and reuse it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Sorry, I said there were three parts and I only mentioned two. Hoping you wouldn't ask about third. Um, but anyway, so can we all see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. So here is Drupal 8.6.x. This is what it looks like right now. I've created four media items, one of each type that comes out of the box with core. And this is what it looks like now when you want to look at the media that you have. It's very similar to what you see when you're browsing for content, right? You have
Yeah.
thumbnail, name, all this kind of stuff. So that's what that looks like. Let me install then the media library. Um, oh, for God's sakes. Hang on one sec. And media library. So what happens is once I turn on the media library and I'll refresh that page, and it's going to look rather different. So this is
Yay.
what the media library looks like, where you have the thumbnails are much more prominent. You can select as many as you want, which is very similar to the other one where you have checkboxes for a checkbox for each row. This
Yeah.
just lets you click on them to
Open
choose them.
is a checkbox.
Yeah.
Is that a
And
simple click?
this, yes, just I'm just clicking.
Okay.
Every media item also can display a couple of bits of metadata, like when it was created and what type it is. And you also have like all the same, you can do like bulk actions with these things. Like this is exactly like on the existing one, where you can select one of these and like say what you want to do with it, for example, or like delete one, which I don't actually want to do.
Hmm.
But so it's essentially just another way to visualize media where it's a grid. It's a responsive grid too. Um, so you have a small screen. It kind of looks like that. Um, and yeah, mostly the thumbnail just becomes very prominent. There are certain, it's a view, so you could add filters to it. And yeah, this is pretty much it.
Hmm.
Other than that, so basically, it's just a much nicer version of the table that we had before. And then uninstalling the media library, it reverts back to what it looked like previously.
Okay.
So what I want from you guys is I just want to get, knee-jerk UX feedback. I have a few specific questions I want to ask you. And yeah, just so that we can make the appropriate changes and get this into core as fast as possible.
I forget
My
that.
knee jerks when the action menu appears and disappears,
Yeah,
and when
I
the
was going to
page
ask about
initially loads and it's not there, it's not obvious that I have to click on any one of these things to make it appear.
I was actually going to ask about that. That was also my knee jerk too. In fact, it was so jarring to me earlier that when I was testing this, I thought it was a bug. Turns out it's not a bug; it's what they actually want to do. So I guess Roy. Do you agree that that's basically terrible, and we should just have the action menu be there no matter
Yeah,
what?
both are terrible because this is way too much space for all that crap on top.
Okay, so all of this.
Um, yeah, I was going to talk about going to discuss the filters because this is what Views gives you, right?
Yeah, I mean, Views gives us a lot more than that. This is another thing I was going to ask you, where the
Which
filters that we're
ones?
presenting here are pretty much identical to what you would get on the previous version of this.
Yeah.
So if that's way too much, then I'd love to talk about that, or like what would be more useful filters to have. Um, you know,
Yeah, there's a lot of prior art about for better filters and in more integrated bulk operations based on your filters. Um, we shouldn't tie that into what you're doing here, but this is definitely a place where we would like to see those improvements.
okay.
Um, but that I guess that boils down to improve how Views presents its filters, right, and bulk operations in general.
Um,
Or could we special case them here and make something nice
we could
and
probably
and
special.
branch that out or see if how we can apply it in general later.
It might be worth mentioning that one of the things that I'm thinking we could do with this is this pattern of like show a grid and click to select. That's something that we could implement here in the media library, but we could make it generic enough that it could eventually be moved into views so that any view could use this pattern, where you're clicking like cards, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's more of an engineering detail right now.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, in terms of the filters, probably the best we can do in the media library is to reduce the number of filters or provide more useful ones right out of the box. I mean, people can always configure the view and add more shit if they want.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but we don't have to necessarily shoot them in the eye when they look at this for the first time. So whatever you think the most useful filters would be, we're open to adding some, removing some. And then as far as improving the presentation of the filters, I feel like that might be sort of I feel like that's a thing we could do in a follow-up issue, just so that we're kind of have our eyes on the prize for what we want media library to
Mm-hmm.
do in
Mm-hmm.
8.6.
I forget the name of the icon bottom right, the hook.
This thing, the
Yeah,
chevron.
chevron, right. What's it supposed to do? Oh, it's expanding.
So it does that. It just expands. It shows you a little bit of metadata about the media file.
So is there a way to view the detail page of the thing?
Yes, the way you would do that
Just the
is
title.
to click on that link.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
But yeah. So what I'm getting so far is that the filters are kind of icky, but
Yeah, there's
probably
a lot of prior art. I'll collect some of the existing issues and see if we can revive those, because ideally we would do that for views in general anyway.
right. Okay. And then also that it's extremely jarring to have the action show up only when you've selected something.
Yeah, that's one of the things we would fix in general. Yeah.
That's good because it's that means we're moving code for us, so we like that. That's really not a problem for us.
Yeah, it's extremely jarring, of course.
Yeah.
So we need. Okay, one more strong reason to actually start fixing it. So.
Yeah, truly.
Not for you to fix then.
To fix the views and its filters kind of looking like shit.
Yeah, not yet. At least
Okay.
that's not for you to focus on right now, I think.
Okay, cool. Let me look at the questions I had. I definitely had some questions for you guys so yeah, like Okay, so there was one thing Sam actually brought this up in Nashville. Are there, off the top of your heads, accessibility concerns with this? I mean, I know you guys aren't the accessibility like maintainers, but Sam was like, I think the cards might not be very accessible. I don't know if he was talking about the media library view though, or the way we intend to integrate it with the authoring experience. Um, but is there anything that leaps to mind for you guys about that?
I guess we need to make sure that we can tab through all the things and that the media types are probably announced or labeled in a way that they can be announced, that this is an audio and this is a video and this is a document.
Okay.
I don't know how, but that's probably one of the things that we need to ensure. Okay, so there.
I mean, the media type is mentioned right here in the metadata.
Yeah.
It's obviously hidden initially, so I don't know if that's an accessibility issue or anything like that, but that makes sense. So we have to make sure tabbing works, and we have to make sure that the
Selecting
appropriate.
works, right? Tab and then enter is selecting it, or
Good question. Let me try that. Enter. Nope, that goes right to it.
right, for example.
So what is it? Let me tab endlessly. Oh, for Christ's sakes, let me just do that. Yeah, I can't select with a space bar, so we'll look into that. Okay, cool. And then okay, so basically we have to make it more accessible in terms of keyboard navigation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fair enough. We can do that. Let me look at my next question. Yeah, is it confusing for bulk actions to only appear? Yes, very much so.
It's not necessarily confusing. It's jarring that they change the layout.
Yeah. So should we maybe have, if there are no items here, should we have like some empty text or something like that? That's just like, hey, you don't have anything in your media library right now.
Yeah, the default empty pattern would be welcome here.
Okay, cool.
And besides doing it so that it doesn't change the layout when that appears, there has to be some indication that when you select things, or that you should click to select, and that when you select things, your bulk operations will appear.
Okay, I mean, well, I suppose we could just make the bulk operations always be there.
That's one way. If we do a show on select, there's an accessibility point as well, because you're further down the DOM, and then somewhere up in the DOM something was added or became available, and that has to be announced as well.
It sounds to me like the easiest thing to do there is to just show the filter, show the actions all the time. Assuming that there's stuff in the view. Like if it's empty, then we obviously don't want to show anything. But if it's not empty, then we should probably just show the actions.
So that's certainly the easiest thing, but that also doesn't address the point that there's no signifier that click selects. We don't have checkboxes. Checkboxes would be a clear signal.
How do we, so here's the thing worth knowing is under the hood, there are actually checkboxes here. They're just invisible. We could definitely do a thing where we actually add the checkboxes visually. And then you could click anywhere on the thing to check the checkbox rather than have this check mark up here. That's an option. Would that be better? Like the way I'm visualizing is like you have this badger here, and then like right below it, you have a checkbox that you can select it, or you can click the entire thing and the checkbox would be checked automatically.
It's actually kind of nice that you have this big target that you can click on, and if you put the little checkbox underneath Badger, people are going to be aiming for that, and occasionally they'll miss and hit the Badger, which will do something else. I guess I'd rather have a checkbox in the upper right corner.
The upper right corner where the check mark is now.
Yeah, but then have an empty circle or something like that, or have something. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
don't have a nothing default state, but show something in the default state for this icon, and come up with an even more selected version or whatever.
So we don't have to show an actual checkbox input, but if we showed like an empty circle here that then gets filled in with a check mark, that would be good.
Yeah,
Like,
and just the empty circle sort of says, click here, just stupid. And
listen up, dipshit.
and sorry, it says click here very clearly. And in fact, you can click anywhere near there. You can click in the whole rectangle. I see that as a feature, not a bug.
Okay, that would be easy for us.
Give me a target to aim for.
Okay. Yeah, that would be super easy. We could definitely do that.
Can you scale it so that we have a 2x2 grid?
Sure.
Now,
and when you say it's responsive, you don't actually have any breakpoints, do you? It's just sort of fixed width.
No,
thing.
it's just Flexbox, doing Flexbox stuff.
Now expand the make over me with the chevron. Aha. So why is the extra info not shown over?
You mean like
image?
over here?
Yeah.
I don't know. If that would be better, we could
I
probably
think design-wise, it would make a lot of sense to keep that box the same size and expand upwards instead of downwards.
Okay. I suppose the only way that could be weird is if there was a lot of metadata in there. It could get like, what if the box was like this tall? Would we want to have like a semi-translucent background or something so that you could still see most of the image?
We would still see your sunglasses, so we'd be cool.
Well, with sunglasses like that, how can you not?
Yeah.
Okay, so like that leads me kind of into my next question is like styling wise, do you have any thoughts about this and like how it looks? I think sort of the icons, I don't know how much we can do about the icons and like what their color scheme is like. I think that was decided in a previously. But maybe we could do something about that.
It's an interesting screen. Christina is and I will be working on an admin redesign. It's an interesting screen to look at and see if we would like to improve or extend some of the
So for
visual
now,
and interaction patterns here. But so far so good, I would say.
okay, so except for the things you guys brought up, well, what am I doing? Okay, let me look at what else I had wanted to ask you guys.
And so we're now only okay. This is step one. Just have the have the new view, right?
Right. This is only step one.
Yeah.
Do we want to give people the option of the list view?
Eventually, maybe.
Well,
no.
Or that is the table view. I mean, I realize that in a lot of systems that's just a re-rendering, but in Drupal that would be a reload of the page because we're switching from table to divs.
We could theoretically do that. Maybe, do you think it would be more like, maybe that would be more of a follow-up issue? I mean, the technical challenge there, Benji, is the fact that both of them have the same path, admin content media. So the list one has that and the media one, and this one has that. And I'm not saying it would be impossible to do it. It's just we'd have to give the list one like some other URL in order to make that work. So that might be more of a follow-up, but I don't know if you guys think it's really important. We could probably make it happen.
It's not super important to me for the first version of this.
Okay.
Because then you could say, well, you could uninstall and have the list again, right?
Okay, so for now we're going to stick with what we're doing now, which is you install media library and it takes over this page. And if you uninstall it, it does go back to the list view.
Yeah, I definitely think it will be a follow-up.
Okay.
/ media / list or whatever, but no, to me it's not a requirement to be able to switch between different renderings.
Okay, we could open a follow-up for that. Benji, are one of you guys taking notes right now, by the way?
I'm not.
No worries. I mean, like I'll be able to look at this in the next hour and just be like, oh yeah, Roy said this, Benji said that. I have a question. This one's going to be a little tricky. So some of these items, like these are all published, right? Media can be published or unpublished. All of these are published, but it's quite possible that some of these could be unpublished, and I'm wondering how to visually distinguish those two states. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because I just don't know how we would make any of these look published or unpublished or anything like that. I thought about like fading them out a little bit, but that makes them look like they're disabled, I think. So yeah, any thoughts? Or if we even want to do that, whatever it's worth.
You could change the background color of the text at the bottom. You could have an overlay of, some sort of slanted lines or something.
And why are we showing unpublished items?
Because it's an administrative view. Like if you want to be able to choose the ones that are unpublished and publish them.
Yeah.
Demonstrate. Let me just really quickly demonstrate what it looks like in the normal view here. So in the old version with the table, you do get a status column that lets you actually just see status published, unpublished. But in the media library, we completely lose that, and I feel like that might be a pretty important thing to have. So I'm just kind of wondering if we should worry about that. That seems like it could be a blocker for the first version of this thing.
Hi, Angie.
Angie.
Hey, folks. Sorry for being a little late.
Hey, no problem. I have the. Cool. You know what's great? I have the UX team all to myself today. So I get to
some UX team.
I get most of the UX team all to myself today. So I get to ask about the media library, and this is how it looks so far. And we've definitely gotten some pretty good pointers. And now I'm just wondering, some of these could be published and some of them could be unpublished. And I want to know how to visually, what a good way would be to visually distinguish that. Because I feel like that's fairly important information, particularly when you consider that the actions here include publish and unpublish. And actually, that brings me even to another question, which is you're saying that you want to have a little circle target up here for people to click in. The problem is if you have a bunch of images that all have different colors, or basically different, so how do we know what color to make that circle, given that we can't really detect what color the image is or what color the circle is going to be overlaid on? Because in this picture, a white circle is going to look pretty thin and hard to see. So that's the thing. I don't really know what to do. I don't know what we should do about that.
Don't give it a transparent background.
Oh, okay. I guess we could do that.
Yeah, or we find a way to make it part of the bottom part.
Is this a thing that we want that maybe?
So this needs design basically. So I would say we need to ensure that whatever checkbox icon rendering we do, that it's foolproof contrast-wise.
Right. That sounds. Getting some design help sounds good for this. Yep. I just wonder who we would talk to get that to happen. Would that be you?
I'll discuss this with Christina, and then we'll find out who.
Okay. Do you want me to check back with you on that? Because me and Sam can continue fine tuning sort of the under the hood stuff. But one of our
you can get back to that with me.
Okay. Cool. So I'll stay on you about that. Do you want me? Would it be helpful, Roy, if I sent around a list of these visual questions that we're coming up with here for the design team to address?
On the issue, right? On the issues, okay.
Yes. And the issue, for the record, let me just send the URL around to everybody. There's the chat. Yeah. Oh, come on. Yeah. So, this is where we're doing the work on this patch. And yeah, I can definitely come up with a list of questions and things that need to be addressed by the design team. And yeah, I mean, there's going to be a point probably within the next week where the patch code looks great, and we're just going to be blocked on design stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not. I mean, I'm not going to be like, hey, when can we have it? Yeah.
But when can we? But when can we have it?
I mean, yeah, it's too early to tell. I guess it would probably be like, I don't know. Do you think it might be like 2 weeks?
I think we should be able to work on this at least next week. So
Okay.
in a week or 10 days or something. Sure.
Another question, actually, this is probably more directed at Angie, being the committer, or actually Roy too. You're both committers. So to ensure that Sam's not blocked on any of this stuff, and to get him like to have him constantly like writing code for this thing, how do you think we could punt a lot of the design stuff? Like once we have the code working and kind of the interactions right, do you think we'd be able to move a lot of the design stuff to follow up issues, just so that Sam can proceed to the field widget part of this whole thing?
I get a little nervous about kicking
Yeah.
cans down roads when it's not clear. Like, because the reason we're here where we are, where is in core, but without a media library, is because we kicked this can down the road already. So the idea of like getting it kind of shitty, but there, and then coming back to it at some undefined period of time to make it better makes me, yeah, it does make me nervous. So I need to know, like, if we're talking about stuff like changing from 18 minutes ago to created 18 minutes ago, that's fine. That's like tweaking text. I don't really care about that so much. If we're talking about, sorry, for some reason I can't see. I'm seeing my head, which is not useful. Can you put it back on his head?
Sorry.
You're also very, very silent, silent or very low volume.
Hold up, I can fix that. For some reason. Yeah, for some reason OS 10 thinks it's super helpful to reduce my input volume all the time. So I guess I should talk quieter or something. Okay. I mean, what I see here, like that you're showing me here, it looks fine, but I'm not a designer either, so I feel like I should be careful of that. We want to try and strike a balance though between, let's say this is 80% of the functionality we're going to need, and then we're kicking the 20% of polish down the road. That feels a little bit better than like this is the 30% of what we're going to need, and it's functionally, working, but making it so content authors can actually use it is kicked down the can. That I would not be okay with.
Right.
So
Adam,
it
click
would
one
help
of the
to know
items.
like what.
Click one of them.
Oops. So
There are, I mean, I don't want to speak for Roy here, but as far as I'm concerned, this is definitely like 80% of what we need, and the rest of it, I wouldn't say is exactly polish. It's important usability stuff, but it's all design stuff, and it's all basically styling stuff. So I would be.
Does your team block you on that? Like you don't have design resources to tell you that you shouldn't pop the entire grid down 35 pixels when you.
I noticed that was wrong the moment I saw it, and we're going to remove that. That's critical.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not polished. That's actually impossible to use. But
it's not impossible to use, but it's adding a usability problem. Like, so it's kind of like this balance of technical debt, right? If we add this patch where you check something and all of a sudden the thing you checked moves and might even scroll out the screen and leave the user confused, we're introducing UX debt into a thing. And so if we're introducing UX debt into a product that already has fucking 20 years of UX debt, that makes me nervous. If it's like we need to massage how blue that border is, then that doesn't bother me. That won't keep me up at night. So I guess that's kind of where I draw the line. Are like, in a way, we're not making anything worse because the current status quo is like completely awful, and like had anything else been different last release, we wouldn't have shipped with it at all. As even a thing. But because that's where we're currently at. Yeah, it's easy to fall in and say, well, it's better than it is. And it's like, well, yes, everything is better than it is. Like, but we don't want to introduce new UX debt without a plan for how we're going to address it. I guess, and a
That's a
timeline for how.
really, really good point. And I think what I would like to know from the design team as soon as possible is, given all the things we were just talking about for the last half hour, and some of the design choices that have been made here and some of the corrections we want to make, what are the things that the design team and the UX team would consider to be absolutely blocking? And the things that are absolutely blocking, let's fix them now. Let's fix them in this patch. And the things that aren't, let's move them to follow-ups. And that's a call that I think the UX team should do.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think, yeah, and I'm really sorry that I wasn't able to join until just now when you already
We
had
spent
gone
some
through this thing.
time on discussing those silly filters and bulk operations on top right, which are the defaults as provided by views.
Yeah.
I mean, which ones is not necessarily default, but
So that's a hard one because like I
that's a
don't want to
very
block
hard
this
one, and
initiative
there's a
on
lot of
effect.
prior art there.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we cut our teeth on that, but phew, we
Yeah.
didn't really manage a solid path forward there.
Yeah.
There's a couple of fixes,
It's a
right?
hard problem. 'Cause, like, yeah, because that's definitely horrible, but it's also pre-existing UX debt, and I don't know that it's
That's not
fair to saddle this
media's
initiative with
thing to
fixing
fix.
previous UX debt just because it also rears its ugly head here.
Right.
On the other hand, like we have done that for other initiatives, like Workflow had to just fix a bunch of fucking revision criticals that had nothing to do with them, you know. But like, yeah, for me, I wouldn't force fix all of the header issues that we know about as part of this, but I would maybe make them major and link them from this and put them in the should have column of the, must, should, could, would,
Yep.
or whatever. Must, could, should, won't.
Yeah.
But what I would not like is we don't elsewhere in Drupal check a box and then completely move the thing you just clicked on. So that I would
We
consider
are getting rid of that.
and I would like to
Yeah,
see
we're
that
not going to do that.
We're getting rid of that. It's done. I thought it was a bug.
Yeah, it's fine. Like, and I could totally see like that's functional, right? It's like you check the box and now you have new options. It's totally functional.
Yeah,
But the way in which it's implemented, I think, is going to add a new area of confusion where one didn't exist before, and that's what I don't want to do as part of this, if it's possible.
right.
In the grand scheme of things, I'd much rather have a media library that introduces weirdness than no media library. So, like, there's some negotiation in here, right? It's like there's what WebPig wants, and then there's what can actually be done. But, it's like if we could start from the basis of, hey, this is what a media library looks like in Squarespace, WordPress, and, fucking Facebook or whatever, and ours looks completely weird and nonsensical compared to that. It'd be great if we could just clean that up prior to commit, But I'm also sensitive to the fact you got a lot on your 8.6 roadmap and, a shrinking window of time to do it.
Right.
So, but what I do not want to do is say something on this call like, yeah, let's get this, 60% case in there and then we'll clean it up later, because we know
We're
also
not very
from
good
20
at
years of
fixing
doing that
things in post.
never works. So it's like everyone has all the intentions of doing that, but you're going to get sidetracked on other things, or something's going to be more pressing now that the media library is technically in core, right? And so that's just, I want to be mindful of that. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through my list of questions after I get off the call, and I'm going to write down all the stuff that came up. Still there?
Yep.
And by the way, if I'm saying anything that contradicts anything that Roy said, listen to Roy and not me, okay? Because I'm not trained in design or UX. I just have a lot of opinions.
I think we're aligned. The filters are a mess.
That you're not saying anything that contradicted anything Roy said. I'm just going to post a list of all these questions that came up about like design stuff, UX stuff. And I just want to know like what.
Yeah, but to me, like the color of blue, the exact wording on labels and stuff like that, that doesn't bother me as much. Now, we should take into account the accessibility team's opinion on that, because I don't want to poo-poo a color of blue if it's like the difference between someone being able to use the interface and not. Like then I do care about the color blue. But like those kinds of things I feel are cosmetic tweaks, and they're also not bound by feature freeze. Like we can still continue to change that stuff in alpha and beta.
Mm-hmm.
So those things I would say are less important than how the thing overall works. And especially where new or changed APIs are introduced, getting that stuff hammered out before alpha is pretty critical, because that stuff is a lot harder to change after like mid-July, basically.
Okay. Duly noted. And yeah, I'm just going to make sure that I just want to know what the UX and design teams and accessibility teams consider to be absolute benefits to landing this in core.
Yeah, I think you
And those
joined
things are fixed.
Angie at the point where we were discussing published versus unpublished, and I think that really still needs a answer, right? Because there's not really an answer yet for it.
Right. And that's
Yeah, and that's a poor like 80% use case of media. You know what I mean? Like, is it visible or not visible to people on the site? So that
right.
does make sense to cover in the first stab at this, I think.
Right. Right. There's also one thing I wanted to raise is in the table version of this view, you also got things like drop buttons with edit and delete actions in them. And I don't know, we don't have anything like that here. If I wanted to edit or delete any of these things, I'd actually have to go visit them to do that. And I don't know if that's a huge problem. It just could look like a regression to some people where it's like, well, wait a minute, before I could just edit and delete stuff right from the list and now I can't. So I don't know if that's considered a blocker or what we should be doing about that.
Yeah, is there a reason we don't have either the drop buttons or the contextual links or something like a pre-existing pattern for that?
Is there a reason? Probably not. This is why I ask these questions. And I mean, yeah, I think it would be possible for us to bring either of those things in. The reason contextual links might be an issue is because, so you see how like when I've got one selected, I get this little check mark up there. That's normally the position where contextual links go. So again, it would need a little bit of design work in terms of, do we want to put contextual links here, or do we want to like add a drop button down in this space?
Yeah, I was thinking where there's currently that collapsey bit that could be a contextual link, but I see now that expands, so maybe it can't be.
We were actually thinking about having it expand upward over the thumbnail here.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's one option. The only problem is like, then it's like, could it be a problem if you put a ton of stuff in here, or a bunch of fields in here? Because this is actually.
I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So, like in general, the more you can stick to existing core paradigms, the better off you're going to be, because all of that shit has been tested for accessibility and usability and all the things. Like, you know what I mean? Where you're introducing new patterns, like this check mark and like this collapso thingy.
Yeah.
Then that needs a little bit more scrutiny because it's a new pattern. We have to make sure it passes all the gates. I mean, one thing that also helps is, my understanding is you guys are implementing this as an experimental module at first.
We are.
Which leaves the option, it's not a wonderful option, but it does leave the option available for, like, if we don't tick every box in terms of like the accessibility gates and the automated testing gates and all that, that there's still a chance to do that between 8.6 and 8.7. But the disadvantage is then you're holding this functionality from production websites for an extra 6 months.
Yeah.
And by then WordPress will ship with Gutenberg and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So it's just like we should try to get this in one release if we can.
Right. No, I agree. And that's the reason I'm bringing it up on this call. And I can see myself being in a whole bunch of UX calls over the next 6 months. Or the next few months, however long it is.
Great. We would love to talk to you. Yeah.
Like, that's the thing is, like, the thing you have to understand is that this code that you're looking at is basically all configuration. It's about 95% configuration. So it was really easy to build. It's basically just a big config export plus an automated test slapped on it. So that's basically all the work that we have to do involves UX stuff. It involves design stuff. And it involves styling stuff and accessibility. So yeah, that I think is sort of, it's very easy for Sam to make changes to this view, but the blocker, well, not the blocker, because I know you guys are on my side, but like the potential blockers, all that stuff is like getting answers back from UX, getting answers back from design, getting answers back from accessibility. So as long as as we can move past that, on those fronts, or move decisively rather on those fronts, then I think we're in good shape here.
Speaking of core patterns, I remember the discussion that went on with the toolbar and what icons to use for putting it in horizontal or vertical mode.
Yeah.
I wonder, maybe we could use those icons here, or maybe we could use a standard hamburger menu.
Like right here, you mean?
Rather,
The
yeah.
chevron?
Yep, I can hear both of you.
Yeah, the chevron is usually the link to go somewhere, right? Currently in.
Yeah. Would it help if we like moved the chevron over here
No.
and you're kind of expanding it? It looks more like a details element.
Yeah, but then it would have to be a different icon.
Why would we need a different icon for that?
Switch the toolbar to vertical.
Oh wait, what the hell did I just do? Oh, that way.
See? Those. Actually, they're collapsy. They're collapsy bits here. So
just copy this pattern basically.
Maybe, yeah, and then expand upwards. Oh, okay, and now go to the configuration page itself. So the overview of configuration, yeah. See? Okay, there actually it's in front, and there it's an indicator for a link. So, how consistent are we already? But here it's mainly decorative to indicate the main link. Yeah. So yeah, this is one that needs like I said, it needs a bit of design. It needs a bit of looking at everything as a whole.
So maybe the recognizable pattern would be to put a hamburger icon in the upper left corner of the image rather than the chevron in the lower right, and then yes, and then have the details expand down.
Interesting.
Hamburgers are for menu options, right? Not necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Let me ask.
I'm not going to answer this on this call. It needs a bit of looking at as well. So we need to identify how the select state, right? This checkbox icon we want to improve.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question apropos to that. Is what can I, seeing as how UX and design need to take a closer look at this, what can I give you guys to accelerate that? Like some code or a demo video of some kind, or like what can I give you that you need to just move on this?
I think the debrief in the issue on what we just discussed is a good thing. And I'll export this screen share.
Okay.
And I'll find the few bits that highlight the actual design issues. So.
Okay. So I'll just debrief it and I'll debrief it in issue, and there you go.
And then I'll discuss with Christina and or other people who are interested in the whole admin UX redesign thing, because this is a good, nice, self-contained exercise. So I think we should be able to move quickly on this one.
Okay, cool. Well, in that case, I'm pretty satisfied with all that, and thanks for your input. Anybody else anything else to be concerns or complaints for media?
No, the only other thing I was wondering is if you could do a demo while we have you here. Although there's only 6 minutes left, so maybe not. But of the YouTube functionality, or is that still kind of?
I did not put a patch for that in here, but I think I'll have to do that in another few days.
Yep, that's fine. So maybe for next week's meeting, though, that would be great, because we talked about it at DrupalCon, and it sounded like it was really close. So it'd be great to just get one final dust off from our team.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I can totally do that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Adam.
All right, cool.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, cheers.
Good already.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the advice.
Most welcome. Bye all.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Bye, everyone.
Sorry.
Wait.
There were also a couple of issues I was hoping to have a quick look at.
Oh, okay.
Should I get up on that?
Okay.
I will leave in 5 minutes though, but
I'm going to stop screen sharing now.
Okay. Share screen, application window. I'll give you the infinite tunnel. And then I'll switch to a different tab. So I guess you see this now? Improved discoverability of the menu expanded option.
Yep.
And for the recording, it's issue 2802837. So I think the screenshots show it pretty well. Here's the before issue. This is managing the main menu when there is only one link in the main menu, and it has an operations column and an enabled checkbox column. So after the patch, either on a small screen, you'll see the same things, but there will be a link to expand. And on larger screens, we add the expanded column with a checkbox. The idea is that previously you'd have to actually edit the menu item in order to get access to that functionality. And many people like to have access to that with fewer clicks. So we actually had some novices working on this at the mentored core sprint at DrupalCon Nashville. And I guess I marked it RTBC, but Alex Pott came back with some questions. One, he says it's strange that the expanded option is available when there are no child links yet. I think I commented previously on the issue that I see that as a feature, not a bug. And then there's the question about disabled links. If the link itself is disabled, whether the expanded option should have any effect, or whether you should even be able to do the expanded option. Any comments in 3 minutes?
Sorry, just reading. Can you scroll back up to the screenshots, like before and after? Okay, so basically we only show the expanded checkbox on a wider screen where enabled is checked. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think Alex is saying that he's noticing that they're not dependent, so it's always there, the expanded.
Yes, I think that's the point.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it makes more sense because expanded does nothing unless enabled is checked. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what would be the better thing to do is only, you could still show the expanded column, I guess, but only showing the expanded checkbox if the first one were selected. I realize that's a much higher bar for this patch, though. And that would also be new, like Drupal 6 or whatever was the last version where we showed that all the time. Didn't make that distinction. It was just there.
Yeah, also,
constantly,
if we
cluttering
compare enabled with published, you can still edit and change unpublished content items, right? So
let's see. I think also if you do go to the edit page for an item, they're independent. You can turn either one on or off with or without the other.
Yeah.
So why should the functionality be different in the tabular view than it is in the edit and item
you're
view?
moving it to a more prominent place.
Okay, thank you.
You're surfacing it earlier, right? So ideally, yeah. I mean, that's why I'm really 50-50 on this whole change. I can see why it being useful. It's also relatively cryptic. Well, that's more about the enabled. Well, I guess it's fine, but yeah, but a good point. They're not dependent on the detail page as well. So hard to say. I think this is a 50-50 decision. interesting small thing to test, but not something to organize a test for. At least not as a single thing. Sorry.
If we had some data or some like, it's hard to get data on stuff like this, but it's like, or some, it's something where it's like this current user isn't being served because of this extra click. Weaker user who is being served by not exposing sort of weird options that don't apply to them in 80% of the cases. You know what I mean? And then arrive at a conclusion. But at the moment, like, I'm not clear on the why, I guess. So I guess this person's saying, why not?
And then his next line is very reasonable, I think.
At least once on every site. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I do think exposing it in the current form isn't great, because what'll happen is people will check it, they'll save, and nothing will happen. And then they'll be confused. If that option, if we did what Alex Potts suggested and the option only showed up if enabled was clicked, that would at least be better, because then it would give you kind of a clue that it goes, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I can give an answer on this call, but I can definitely go in there, read through the comments, and leave some kind of a further question that we could maybe work on or something like that. But I definitely don't feel like I can make a call right now and say, well, obviously we should do this. This is clearly beneficial for everybody, I also would like to spend some time in Git blame and figure out when we remove that and why, because I think making decisions like this, not having the full context of the history, is sometimes problematic. So.
Yeah,
okay.
that's
well,
quite
thank you.
back and forth.
All right, I am following that issue, and I will attempt to get a comment in there before next meeting. So thanks for raising it, Benji.
Okay.
You're welcome. Thank